Right, we're here to talk about the site safety inspections that we need done around the countryside to ensure that, firstly, that we know what condition our stations are in, and secondly that we do this regularly, probably every 2 years, to maintain an inspection record that we know they're in good condition, and we've got a process for working out what work needs to be done. So the documentation that we have today is this station safety inspection form, which we'll be going through in the process, and there's a guideline, this document here, which gives you a number of quite a lot of explanation about what you're looking for and how to assess it. The document gives you a list of what to take with you. You should bring a copy of the last one of these inspections if there was one done. You need probably this document to help you through it, at least for the first time. You need a paper version of this form so you can write on it. You need a camera, little digital camera to record it, a measuring tape, a grubber or a spade probably to have a look at some foundations, and then something to poke into the timber to see if it's rotten or not, so a large screwdriver or a crowbar or something. And you may well need a torch to look carefully into some hard to see places. And if you've got a cableway, which we do have here, a copy of the last cableway inspection and the engineer's report from that. Okay, so here we are at Selwyn at Whitecliffs, as you can see, an old concrete structure built in 1961, catwalk that's probably looking in a worn state, and we'll have a closer look at that. There's a lock chain across there, which is obviously a token barrier. Of course, anybody can roll underneath it, and so yeah, this is what we've got, and we'll have a look and see what condition it appears to be in. Well, firstly, the chain, it's in reasonable nick. So the locks, it's all pretty new stuff. We've got a sign here. It's the older no access sign, but that will do the job. One thing that it doesn't have here at the start of the cableway is a load limit sign, and we will be providing some of those. Firstly, the first item on the form is the vehicle track coming in. Well, the vehicle's right here, right beside us, so that's not really relevant. It's all safe and that's all okay. There's no real issues with drainage on it. There's not a walking track into here, so again, those first two items aren't that relevant. General drainage on the site is adequate. It's just been raining and there's no big puddles here, so not really an issue. Coming back to signage on the form, we've got the standard fall hazard sign on the door over there, the please keep off. We'll have a look at the cableway later, and we don't have the load limit sign that I just mentioned. Just a quick note about the appearance. Is it the weeds and the moss and everything in reasonable condition? Well, yes. There's a bit of moss around, especially in this area, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on too. Rust and corrosion, generally okay. General overall professional appearance, well, let's see. It's not great, is it? There's a bit of graffiti that could be covered up. There's mould, there's old grey, there's black streaks down there. There's old timber. The galvanising's okay, it's just starting to rust in places. An adequate padlock. Good steel door and a latch. There's also another one here, a shielded padlock, which is not being used. Good steel door. Hinges in good condition. Pretty solid stuff, it's not going to fall off as you open it. I guess if you're going to be fussy, it wouldn't hurt to have a little bit of oil or grease on those hinges. We're going to start having a look at the tower and the main structure itself, and I recommend that we start from the bottom. of this, because then we can start looking at the critical things from the bottom up. So that's what we'll do. We'll go down the bottom of this site. So here's the access track down to the water level recorder. It's just been raining. It's a little bit wet. It's potentially a bit slippery in places, especially with a bit of mowing grass on here. So question being, do we need to do something about this? It wouldn't warrant a handrail because there's no big no fall. It's really just a slip over hazard. If we put in steps, even wooden steps, we've got a maintenance issue over time. So this is sort of on the marginal aspect of what we would do here. It's public access. There's a the road is right there. People come here for swimming and picnicking. So this track just happens to be here. It's not anything we've really built, so we probably don't have any particular liability for it from the public perspective. Maybe in the slipperiest places we should look at putting some steps in a little closer to the bank and maintaining those over time. But what we're here to look at is the structure. 1.2 diameter 1961 version of a concrete stilling well tower, and overall it looks in pretty good condition. But looking around it, we've got some construction joints. This construction joint here, been here for a while. It's been painted over. To my non-engineer's eye, it probably looks like it's okay. The crack pretty much stops in places. They could be of concern, and they're something that should be at least eyeballed by an engineer, even if it's just by a photograph. And secondly, we will take some photographs of it so that we can monitor any change over time. Well, one of the main aims is to provide a photographic record of what we're finding at the moment, both from the point of view of recording what's here and recording what needs to be done, and so comparisons can be made in years to come as to whether something is changing or not. The crack is still visible, but pretty much diminishes around here, but we'll take some photographs of where it isn't as well as where it is. Notably, we have a steel hatch here, half buried. It may or may not be part of the structural integrity of the tower. I guess to some extent it is, because if this isn't sound, then we've got an unsound hole, part of the structure. So the maintenance requirement here is that it should be cleared, and so these nuts and the steelwork stays clear of corrosion. There's one other thing that I'm noticing from here, and we'll look at it later, but this has mains power, and I see a very fine bare wire coming out of the bottom of the tower, and just on that first plank of the catwalk, and I see it running along the beam, along the wooden beam, and then it's actually covered over by a piece of timber. So presumably that is the earth wire for the mains power, and that's important. As we noted, that wire comes out from the bottom of the tower, runs along here, along the wooden bearer, and it's covered over along here with a thinner piece of timber, and then it appears to be fastened to this earth stake driven in here. I've pulled the wire, and yeah, it appears to be intact. So from that point of view, I think we have an adequate earth. Again, it's something that on a safety inspection that should be checked, and so I'll take a photograph of it so that next inspection, somebody also comes in and checks that, and they know where to look for it. Okay, we've got these series of bolts in the tower here that I'm taking a photograph of. There's a pair here, and a pair up there, and another one, presumably two. Yeah, one starting to get rusty down here. I'm guessing from here that they're holding the ladder on, the ladder for going down the well, and so it's important, if ladder's going to be used, that these bolts are sound and of adequate size. So we'll check on that further. We'll take a photograph of the underside of the tower from here, and we're particularly having a look at the way these beams for the catwalk are anchored onto the tower. We can see from here there's quite a significant bracket of a reasonable size that goes around the arc of the tower. Zoom up a shot on the camera of that. Okay, so here we are having a look at the way those beams are fastened to that bracket, and I can see from here that there are 2 bolts going through the bottom of that I-beam on each of these 2 I-beams. So that bolt right along there, it has a twin on the other side, and it looks to be of an adequate size and condition. I'll just have a wee bit of a closer look at it again and measure it. But from here, that looks reasonable, and the condition of this bracket and those bolt heads also look reasonable. And now we want to look at the connection for the beams onto this concrete block here, which is obviously its anchor. As you can see, it's an area that hasn't been kept clear of debris, and so we've got quite a mass of the usual sort of soil and mud and the like in here. And so if I scrape it away, I can see we've got one bolt here holding this beam down. Presumably there's one on the other side as well. Condition for the moment, but it's not getting any cleaner. Appears to be a 16mm bolt. Just looking at it, I think that's correct. So probably the right size for it. The beam ends here, just before the concrete wall, and so it's got space here. So as long as this concrete block is sound and not moving towards the river, then I think we can say the block looks all right. So on this side also we've got the anchorage well covered with silt and dirt and the like. In reasonable condition, probably quite good condition for its age, but it is going rusty. And we'll just measure its size, 16mm, to keep this in good condition, because this is this plus 3 others in this line is what's holding this whole structure back to this anchor block here. And so it's important that stays clear, and we'll take a photograph of that so that can be checked next time. And work to be done there. I think it needs a clean and paint. So what we'll do here is measure the size of the beams so we can see if they're adequate. And you can see what we've got here is an I-beam, steel I-beam in reasonable condition. It's got some damp-proof course over the top of it, and this, I suppose you call it a bearer, running along on top of the I-beam to nail or bolt this timber to. There's a bracket here that holds a clamping bracket that holds the timber down to the I-beam. That looks in reasonable condition, probably can do with a paint. This bearer along here looks pretty old. I guess it's original from 1961. Question, does it need replacing? Well, let's have a look at these timbers, and if they need replacing, then probably it's worth doing those as well. Across the bottom it's 75 mils. This way it's 150. So 75 by 150 by what gauge? 6mm. 6mm? Yep. So I guess you say I-beam 75 by 150 by 6mm. 100 by 75 by 6. We'll look at this side now, and presumably it's the same size. Yeah, you never know when something might be a bit strange. Yep, same configuration of bearers and clamping brackets. The timber. Well, let's look at the condition of this timber, I guess we can say that apart from this guy here, that was obviously found wanting at some stage, these are starting to look the same. And you can see they're well past their best, and they're certainly, in this case, it's certainly not adequate for holding a handrail. As you can see what happens here, a little bit more digging with my fingernail and exposes that bolt. Unfortunately, this is a very common way of putting handrails on our older recorded towers and catwalks, and bolting a flange through this timber, although it's probably pretty good when the timber is new. As time goes by, as you can see what happens, it's actually a poor way of doing it, and it's not something we want to be done at all in the future. We can see that the general condition of the timbers is similar. It's probably the worst handrail mount, but the others are getting the same way. And as we go further out, of course, there's much more exposure than there is at this end. The timbers need replacing. The handrail itself needs to be replaced, obviously, when the timbers are done. The mounting needs to be different, and so we will look at using a more standardised approach. And also, given that this location has ready public access, the road is about 20 metres in that direction, and as I mentioned, a bit of a picnic spot, then we'll have to look at the handrails and the infill. They'll have to be infill barriers with vertical bars to meet the building code these days. 230 volts mains power here. As you can see, an older sort of switchboard. Here's our earth wires coming out of here, and presumably running down in this cable, and we saw from the outside where it runs out through the bottom of the concrete floor and along to the earth stake, and so that aspect of it appears correct. Again, being an older switchboard, it doesn't have an RCD on it, and so we can easily add RCDs by adding the plug-in device into these plugs, just insert in between. So what this needs is two of those plug-in RCDs, which cost a few tens of dollars each, and we would then have, given that the earth is in reasonable condition, we would then have some reasonable electrical protection. We have access to the internal well here. We have a ladder structure here, and we saw the top bolts of it through the other side of the tower, and they look to be in okay condition. When we open this up, again we have a ladder going all the way down the tower. We can see the size of the bolts, and we looked at the bolt heads on the outside, and again, from what we could tell of at least the first two pairs of bolts, that they appeared to be in reasonable condition, and from here we can see that they look good. The only comment one would have is that there's no washers there, but that's probably relatively minor. But if they were being rebuilt again or put together, they should have a flat washer and a spring washer on each one. Also from in here, we should look at the bolt heads from that bracket holding the catwalk together, and we can do that. We have to do that by lying down here, having a bit of a look, and we can see that there's a nice big curved bracket on the inside with 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 16mm nuts on it, bolts and nuts. So that all looks good. We'll take a photograph of that for future reference. So one way of looking into awkward spots like this is to force the flash on your camera and put the camera around there and have a look on screen and see if you've actually and look at it that way, and record it, of course. Beams, decking material, ladders. Okay, given that this well has a ladder down it, it's possible to go down with the appropriate fall arrest system and rescue system, and for that one needs a decent anchor. in the roof or a tripod. In this case, we've got this anchorage here, and it has actually been tested, and we can see it's a free fall arrest anchor. It's been assessed at 15 kilonewtons and tested with a load cell. It is certified until the 7th of October this year, and so that's all valid. Okay, the electrical equipment, we should have at least an eyeball of what condition it appears to be, and you can see this has been nicely anchored with the right sorts of clips. Apart from the spider webs, this all looks okay. A bit of conduit coming down to the switch and the door switch here. Runs along here, and we have the battery charger plugged in, and let's have a look at its electrical cable and connection. So basically just the simple flex coming in, and the wires neatly coiled up, so no particular issue with that one. And this other cable that comes around the roof comes down here, again coiled up with a 3-pin plug. Bit of amalgamating tape around there, but that looks probably, I know it's been permanently connected like that, so no one pulls it apart, so that's all good, makes it safer as well. And this cord goes to this charger here, so that's the only plug in the circuit, and the cable was reasonably tidy, so no big issues there. Okay, so here we have this White Cliffs cableway, a standard 11-foot cableway tower on this side, 11 feet, that's the size it was originally and what they're known as, and that's the smallest of the 4 sizes of standard cableway tower. So what we're going to have a look at here is, we'll have a quick look over at what the general site engineering inspection looks at. And so this is a bit of an interim check and another set of eyes on what the engineers see, and we're looking for other things as well related to safety. So we're just looking at the general maintenance here, so we can see, yeah, the block's a bit covered by leaves. Well, it's winter, I guess that's par for the course. More importantly, we might be looking for anything that might have changed, and we're also looking at drainage around the block, which appears to be adequate given that we're in wet conditions anyhow. Let's just have a look at the, as an interim check, at the anchor rod, and there's no particular cracks here, nothing that would give us any concern. The concrete itself, particularly in these areas, all sounds pretty good. This U-bolt here, it's well wrapped in Denso tape, no one's really interfered with it, the cows haven't chewed it off or anything like that, so that's all good. The back stays still looking okay, and the tower is still standing straight fore and aft. What we need to have with us is the engineer's report from last time to see what the engineer required done in the way of maintenance work and any repairs. So we want to check off that has been done, and we're able to do that. We've got that here, and the work has in fact been done. With the tower, we'll just again have a quick look over to make sure everything appears sound, that all the nuts and bolts are tight, that there's no issues here, no bending, no frost damage or anything to the blocks, that that these are clear, and the drainage is good around these as well. And just really a look over the whole lot, check all the various bits off. Nobody's been up and loosened anything or stolen any bits off it that might compromise its safety. So yes, we've got some signage here. It's the old signage. It's still appropriate, but what we would prefer also would be to add the small fall hazard sign that we have these days, and is designed to fit on the cableway towers at eye height. But in this case, it wouldn't hurt to have it on both sides. Access here to the platform is all good, and you can see on the platform that we've got good handrails and new timber on the structure, and that is part of the work required by the engineers after the last inspection. So these handrails, barriers if you like, on this cableway platform are our standard design, and there's a couple of advantages on having standard designs. One of them of course is cost and efficiency, so we know exactly what we're going to put on. Secondly, when this comes to be inspected by the engineer, he knows exactly what he's looking for. He knows that there are enough fillets in it, that the bolt sizes are correct, and there's enough anchor points. And so that standardisation is something that we're definitely pushing, and it has to happen around the country. So a good platform here and a good barrier. I feel pretty safe standing on this edge here. The cable car swinging around. I can see it's all nicely anchored down. It's really well braced, and it's anchored nicely into the timber with big washers and plates underneath. We can see the cableway car. The cable car has recently been refurbished. It's all in good condition, stainless steel bolts with washers and spring washers, latches here. Okay, here's the floor of the car, nice and sound, plywood, coach bolts nicely pulled into the timber, drainage holes put in, and apart from the possum shit and what have you, it's in pretty good condition. Right, this is the standard cable car brake with a block of rubber here, and in operation you just pull this up and put pressure on here to stop the car, and you can slow it or stop it completely. And so when you're gauging, you just pull the brake on, clip that into the cleat, and you can do that one-handed, and that keeps you there while you're doing your vertical or whatever you're doing. One thing that is missing here is some protection for the cable underneath where the wheels sit. This is not a windy spot, and I will check with the engineers as to whether they deem that necessary. I'm sure that's something they've looked at, but part of this inspection is to check things that may have been overlooked. In situations where there's a bit of wind, these cable cars have a tendency to swing around, and the wheels will wear the top of the cable, and so we want to have a quick look and see whether there is in fact any wear occurring where the cable car normally sits. And the normal practice is to slip a piece of slit alkathene tubing over the top of the cable and run the wheels up onto that. Okay, so what we have here is a cantilevered structure that definitely appears to be part of this station, but we can't actually work out what it's for. And so you can see it's got, it's old, it's in poor condition, it's got, looks like railway line steel underrunners and or beams and underrunners and old timber here. We've got no use for it. We don't know what the use ever was actually, but it's something we need to get rid of. It leaves us open to liability. We've got a sign on it saying no access, but that won't necessarily stand up in court. So the remedy we have here, get a passing digger to pull it out, cut it off with a gas axe. Yeah, I think pulling it out with a digger is probably the best idea. In the last section of the form we've got access to the gauging section. We want to know whether we've got an adequate track down for the gauging section, given that people might be carrying gauging gear down there, including things like riverboats or whatever. If there is a structure or steps or handrail, that they are in good condition, and if there's anything more structural like a ladder, then obviously it needs to be that needs to be part of the whole site inspection as well. In one or two cases we might have cables across the river, which could in some circumstances be a hazard to kayakers or jet boaters, or even helicopters. On a river like this here, you would not expect to see a jet boat come up, but give it a little bit more water and some of the mad boat drivers that are around, you could well see somebody in one of these little jet dinghies zoom up here, and if we had a cable not far above the water, then that would definitely be a hazard for them. And ditto for kayakers. It's not really a kayaking river, but you can see in a day like today, kayakers might decide that this is good sport, so we need to be well aware of that. And the remedy is, if we have a cable, make sure it's very high, above the height of jet boats and kayakers and floods, or don't have it at all, or do it some other way. Or alternatively, make sure there's some markers on them, some decent flags that you can pull out into midstream. For helicopters, nothing that's an issue at this site, but on a site like the Ahuriri, you can see that in, say, low cloud conditions, one of the local farmers on his helicopters might well come up the valley close to the river. He would normally be at an illegal height unless he was landing, but nevertheless a helicopter might fly in that situation. And so the Ahuriri Tower with its red and white stripes is a good marker for that. It's impractical to mark the cable, but mostly helicopter pilots do look out for poles and towers that would indicate to them that there'll be a cable rigged.